Greetings, friends, fellow citizens, and fellow patriots. Welcome to this week's edition of the We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski, and I'm the president of the We the People Convention. And this broadcast is brought to you by the donors to the We the People Convention, and we thank each and every one of you for your generous support. We are recording this podcast on Saturday, February 26, 2021, and we're awful glad that you decided to take your time to join us. The We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast is basically a weekly summary of the news that we think is important for you to know. And I've actually been getting emails from many of you kind of telling me that you've turned off a lot of the news. You really don't want to hear it. And you're basically tuning into our podcast to kind of just get brought up to speed on what's going on. And I understand that. I mean, I think that, a lot of us are in that situation. So I will try to do a good job of bringing to your attention things that I think you need to know and that affect you. Now, again, if you're new to this podcast, and I thank all of you who watch the podcast, who share it with other patriots. I'm hearing from a lot of new listeners who really enjoy the podcast. That's the best marketing you can have is people, word of mouth, telling others, that they should tune into this and sharing the web link. We do this podcast every, pretty much once a week. Sometimes if something big's going on, we'll do one in between the week. But generally, we try to put them up on Saturdays. That's when kind of the news has all kind of worked itself out, and it's a good time for a recap. So, if you're new to this podcast, just know that our mission is to protect and defend our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, and the U.S. Constitution and our way of life, the American way of life. So that's what we try to do here. And I think you'll enjoy the show. I know you will hear things you don't hear anywhere else, and as far as news stories go, because, our news is just so dysfunctional. There isn't news. There's only propaganda out there. It's very hard to find the truth, to find news. We work very hard to make sure that what we tell you is accurate as possible and is valid information. So, we have news that maybe you won't hear anywhere else, but you'll certainly get some opinions from me that are very different. And, I'm not saying I'm always right. And I'll talk a little bit about some things that I've been wrong about in this podcast. But my opinions are really intended to help you understand the world around you and what's going on, and give you some perspective, because that's what we all need. So we're going to start the show today with some really, really good news. And that is that late on Friday, a judge in Arizona finally ruled that the entire that the Senate of Arizona's lawsuit against the Maricopa County Board of Elections, asking them to provide the ballots and the machines that they use to count the ballots in the election in Arizona, that their subpoena is valid. And the judge has ordered the Maricopa County Republican or Board of Elections to turn over the ballots and the machines. Why is this so important? After the election, after January 6th, after the inauguration, we kind of set the course for what do we have to do. What is their goals going forward? The number one goal is we have to prove the voter fraud. This particular case is really important because it's the first time that we're actually going to get our hands on 2.1 million actual ballots, as well as the machines. This is just a big deal, folks, and I'm very excited about this because we've got to know the truth. We got to know, was the election tampered with, or was it not? And in Arizona and Maricopa County, there's you've seen the things from Mike Lindell. You've seen, all the other evidence that showed they had, Trump lost Arizona by just like 10,000 votes. And there were like 30,000 people who voted who didn't register. There were like 100,000 people who didn't live in the state. And so to have these ballots actually be audited by someone who's really trying to find the truth, which is the Arizona State Senate, is critical. Now, be clear. This is not going to overturn the election, right? The ship has sailed. Even if we prove that in all the states that, the ballots were tampered with and Trump really won, Joe Biden's not stepping down, okay? And it'd probably be 2022 before we could impeach him, for the fraud. But it's critical to take this first step to prove that the ballots were wrong. This is our chance. You should celebrate this. You should be very excited about this. If you go to wethepeopleconvention.org, you'll see this graphic and you'll see the story. Go on it and share this story. It's really, really important. And it was a big break. And I hope you feel that way as well. Now, there's other things going on that are good news in a world where all the news, quote unquote, all the propagandists want to tell you is all the bad news, right? We're trying to get you some perspective. In New Hampshire, there's something really crazy going on where they had audited they had done a paper audit where they counted the actual ballots in this county in New Hampshire called Windham. Okay, and when they did that, they found that the Republicans in that Windham village where they had voted, that all the Republicans had 6%, almost exactly 6% of their votes changed. And this is the biggest voter discrepancy in the history of New Hampshire. New Hampshire's been around for 200 and some years. And so the Senate of New Hampshire voted on Monday of this week unanimously, 24-0, to audit the rest of the votes in this city, in Windham, okay? Now, they had only hand counted, so they said, here's what the machine said, now we're going to do the paper ballots. And when they did the paper ballots, they found out that every Republican lost about 300 votes, which was about 6%. But they were only looking at state reps because that's where the conflict was, that was where the challenge came from. But now the Senate of New Hampshire wants to look at all the races. And something really bizarre happened in New Hampshire that you may not be aware of. In New Hampshire, it was one of the biggest success stories for the Republican Party in the country in the 2020 election. They flipped the New Hampshire House and Senate from Democrat to Republican, and yet Trump still, quote unquote, lost. That's impossible. So now we want to get this, this audit done in just this one, area again, hoping to move towards an audit of the entire state of New Hampshire. And a funny thing happened. The New Hampshire Attorney General and the Secretary of State have moved in to confiscate the voting machines from this Windham community. And they're angry. They're saying, listen, this is our election. These are our machines. We bought and paid for them. We want to do our own audit. And the state AG and the Secretary of State are coming in and saying, no, we're going to confiscate these machines and then we're going to look at it. Really? Yeah. So we're going to see how that plays out, but just keep an eye on that. Those are the kind of things that are going on. And then we talked about we need to prove all this, the voter fraud, to delegitimize Joe Biden and his administration, okay? But also to give us the moral authority to change the election laws so that we can have a fair election in 2022, okay? We got to fix this. Well, it starts with trying to making sure that we can prove that there was something really wrong, and then we've got to pass laws in these states. And here's what's going on in Georgia, and it's really pretty cool. In Georgia, they had the Senate passed a bill this week requiring ID for absentee voting. So now, in Georgia, the problem was that they sent in all these absentee ballots and they didn't even compare signatures. Now the Georgia Senate is saying, we want to go beyond comparing signatures. We want you to have to show ID of some sort before you can vote absentee. And of course, they're screaming, racism. You're all just doing this to suppress the vote. Folks, that's a canard. That's like Joe Biden when he said this week that blacks and Hispanics don't know how to use the internet. And so they can't sign up to vote. What a racist pig, okay? This isn't about racism or suppressing the vote. This is about fraud. And they keep hiding behind the "you're a racist and you're trying to suppress the vote" lie, but nobody's buying it anymore. And so we'll see what happens in Georgia when they do this, okay? But at the start of the week, we were very upset, and I put out this story about the Supreme Court rejected all of the 8 election fraud cases that were coming before them. And folks, this was just a travesty. It was just a travesty because the Pennsylvania case, as we talked about in the last couple of weeks, is so fundamental to election integrity. The Pennsylvania case was about the fact that the U.S. Constitution says that the legislators of the state, the legislatures of the state, make the rules for voting. And most states' constitutions say the same thing. Well, in Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court and the Secretary of State and everybody else was changing the rules. The legislature in Pennsylvania never said that you could have absentee ballots that could be mailed in after the election. And the Supreme Court didn't take that case. And they were roundly criticized for this. And they're cowards. And they have been intimidated by the left, by the communist left, because the left said, we're going to pack the court and take your power away, right? And they basically are saying, don't you dare do anything to stop us from cheating. And the Supreme Court has let us down. And so we were very upset on Monday when that story came out. But I have good news for you. Out of the blue, something has come up that is indeed significant. The Attorney General of Arizona, a guy named Mark Brnovich, okay, he filed a suit in 2016, after the 2016 election, that talked about the illegality of ballot harvesting and of voting when you're not a resident. And it's, now again, that's 4 years ago. But this is an election fraud case that the Supreme Court is actually going to hear. And they're going to hear it this coming week. On March 2nd, there are oral arguments. And this is a significant case. And I urge you to go to wethepeopleconvention.org and read the whole story, because the woman who wrote this Rachel Alexander, is saying that, this suit can go a long way to stopping the voter fraud all over the country. And people said to me, well, Tom, why do you think that they're hearing this suit when they turned down these other 8 cases? And my answer to that is, besides the fact that the Supreme Court has been intimidated, was that this suit has kind of followed the natural course of getting to the Supreme Court. This AG from Arizona filed it. A federal court, said that it was valid and ruled on it. It then went to an appellate court. Then it went to the Ninth Circuit Court, and it was then challenged there. And now it's come to the Supreme Court. We need to keep an eye on this case. This could be really a godsend to help us start to make sure that the law is clear. And that is what the Supreme Court must do. Now, will they do this? This case will be a great test, because we've got to make sure that we fix this election fraud issue. And it's going to have to take place in the states, but if we can get some help from the courts, folks, it'll make a big difference. So keep an eye on this case. So now I want to bring attention to something that I put out this week. I didn't send it out nationally, so many of you haven't heard this story, but I was getting ready to when this whole thing kind of took an interesting twist. I had one of our members send me a link to a website that's called TrumpVoterList.org. And so when I went to this website, it said, "Help us fight domestic terrorists. Welcome to TrumpVoterList.org. We've created this organization to ensure that those responsible for the election of Donald Trump can never threaten our nation and our freedom again. We're building a list of known Trump voters to be submitted to public officials willing to take action. Join us in ensuring freedom always rings. Whoa, what the heck is that about? And when you click the link, there was a form that said you can give your name or not, but give us your email, okay? And then tell us of someone you know who's a Trump voter so we can ID them. And then let us know if you think we should release these names publicly or just to officials to investigate them. And I'm thinking, oh, really? Yeah, you want to play? They said about our team, we're a diverse group of patriots and people of color looking to make a positive difference in America by unmasking Donald Trump voters. We believe that the majority of Trump voters only supported his presidency anonymously. It is clear that the true majority of Americans opposed Donald Trump in public, but it is our duty to expose them who's actually supported him in private. Okay? So they basically were trying to out Trump supporters. So what I had done is I had gotten together an email where I was going to have all of you go to this TrumpVoterList.org and put in Democrats and out them as Trump supporters. And we were going to have a little fun, a little mischief with these morons, right? These commie snowflakes. So I sent out the first email here in Ohio and to a kind of a smaller list of people. And I had tested the link before I had sent out my email. And what happened was, before I could send it to you nationally, the website was gone. First, you got an error, like a security code, and then literally you got a message like, this website does not exist. So I guess they got that we were on to them, and we had a little fun with them, but that's how sick these people on the left are. And I just wanted to share that with you because that's what these people are trying to do, is they're trying to create a list of enemies. We're not going to let them. And they're not going to get away with it because we're going to fight them every step of the way. And that's one of the ways I was going to fight them when I was putting out that email. Okay? So here we go, with the misinformation again about January 6th. The DOJ, has a problem because their documents are showing that Facebook was the main tool used to organize the people who actually rioted on January 6th, not Parler. Facebook was used by 73 of the people charged with crimes, more than all other social media sites combined, according to Forbes analysis. Alternative social media site Parler was banned from using Amazon's online infrastructure in the wake of the riot due to its alleged connections to the violence, but was only used by 8 people charged, Forbes reported. Both Apple and Google removed Parler from their app stores. Facebook is the DOJ documented favored platform of the Capitol rioters thus far charged. They plotted there, they celebrated there, they bragged about their lunacy there. Meanwhile, Parler was deplatformed for merely being suspected of this dubious distinction. They weren't suspected. No. There was no suspicion. They weren't suspected by Apple and Google and Facebook. They were targeted. Come on, folks. There was no suspicion there. They didn't have any facts. They just wanted to get rid of the competition. It's becoming increasingly clear that the coordinated big tech effort to kill Parler was not in any way related to some noble goal of quelling right-wing violence and insurrection plotting. After all, the alleged violence and plotting were clearly conducted for the most part on the very big tech platforms that targeted and attempted to destroy Parler. This is not only unconscionable and unjust, it's un-American. Wonder how that's going to show up in the Parler lawsuits against Google, huh? You think that might show up pretty well? Again, folks, you can lie and make charges, but we will find the facts and we will fight back and we will not be censored. And there's proof of it. I want to bring you this story, which is related to this whole, targeting situation. Many of you are familiar with a doctor who's been very outspoken in the COVID situation. Dr. Simone Gold, who was one of the doctors who was called one of the American frontline doctors, and has been really out there talking about, how this whole COVID thing is fraudulent and that Fauci's a fool and they're lying to you and all that. Well, I came across a story this week that said the FBI broke down my door in a SWAT team raid of 20 men. She was on with a podcast with Michelle Malkin and talked about how they basically did a Roger Stone on her because she was at the Capitol, and I think she was in the Capitol building. But what you're going to see when you look closely at these charges, the people being charged, most of them are being charged with very minor crimes. They're trying to blow it all up about insurrection, all that. There's no proof. They got nothing. They aren't going to win in a court of law. So, most of these people are trespassing or, entering a building unlawfully or whatever. But they've only charged, I think, 200 people. Well, heck, they charged 183 of the Antifa people when they attempted to assault the White House last summer. Okay, so there were hundreds of thousands of people at the Capitol building on January 6th. If they've charged 200 people and they aren't going to convict them all, right? How was this an insurrection? How is this domestic terrorism? It's not. It's a lie. Don't believe the lie. But here's a fool who believes the lie. Merrick Garland, who is Biden's choice to become the new Attorney General. He was going through confirmation hearings this week and just sounded like a fool. Merrick Garland said that the Portland riots may not be domestic terrorism because the courthouse was closed. Yet the DOJ's own definition of domestic terrorism doesn't say anything about whether the federal building is open or closed when it's assaulted. Okay? And so this clown, Merrick Garland, is talking about how, the main target is domestic terrorism. And we've shown you at WeThePeopleConvention.org, the FBI last year in 2020, with all the burning of cities and all the other stuff going on, only found 183 people in the entire country who they charged as domestic terrorists. And yet these people are trying to tell you that it's the biggest threat to our nation. It's all propaganda. It's up to you and me to inform our fellow citizens that it's all propaganda. And I think we're winning that. Nobody in America understands why there's troops around the Capitol. They don't see the threat. No one's ever said what the threat is. And this week they had hearings on Capitol Hill and nobody knows nothing. The Capitol Police, the head of the Capitol Police Department, the Washington, D.C. Police, we don't know what happened. We called for help. They didn't send it. And so this whole committee, this 9/11 commission that Nancy Pelosi wants to put forward, go ahead, folks. Every time they do this, just like the special counsel against Donald Trump, we find the truth and embarrass them. This last impeachment, the Democrats didn't embarrass Donald Trump. Donald Trump embarrassed them. We blew them up. We used their own words against them. We're not afraid of them. We're going to fight them and we're going to beat them, and we are beating them. So they got a lot of bravado, folks, but we're going to fight back. Even Dr. Gold, who was arrested, okay, she's out. She'll fight it in court. They're not going to stop her. She's not going to stop talking. It's critical. But I want to read this to you because someone sent this to me. One of our members sent it to me. And a lot of stuff in the show comes from you. And thank you for everyone who writes to me and sends us information that I can share with all of you. This is from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. It's about how DHS will combat this domestic extremism. Domestic violent extremism poses the most lethal and persistent terrorism-related threat to our country today. The Department of Homeland Security, working with its many partners at the local, state, and federal levels, is taking immediate action to address it. On Thursday, DHS issued more than $1 billion in Homeland Security grants to eligible state, local, territorial, and tribal partners, as we do each year. These grants are critical tools to protect the homeland from our most urgent threats. That is why I have designated domestic violence extremism as a national priority area for the first time and will require state and local governments to spend 7.5% of their DHS grants awards combating this threat. In practice, this means that state and local governments nationwide will spend at least $77 million to prevent, prepare for, protect against, and respond to domestic violent extremism. Okay? That's what the Biden administration is doing. They want to spy on us. They want to spy on us. We're not going to let them. We'll talk about some of the things that are going through Congress right now and how we're not going to let them, okay? So there was also a situation this week where the left decided that they're going to go after AT&T and Viacom and Cox Cable, and they're going to say to them, you need to take Fox News and One America News and Newsmax off your TV channels because they spread misinformation. Yeah. Who made you king and decided you could decide what's misinformation? You morons. Did you ever hear the First Amendment? No. They never heard of anything that's a law. They only heard of their stupid opinions. So they came out with that. A couple Democratic congressmen were saying that we want you to do this. And the West Virginia Attorney General wrote to all of them, and he wrote to the news providers and urged them to resist the calls for this type of censorship. He said they are overstepping their authority by pressuring the industry to engage in dangerous, anti-competitive, and collusive censorship of conservative daily news programming. And so some purported news outlets have long been misinformation, rumor mills, and conspiracy theory hotbeds that produce content that leads to real harm, said the Democratic congressman about Newsmax, One America News, and Fox News. But this AG said, don't do it or we're going to sue, okay? You don't have a right to censor. There is a First Amendment. This is how you fight back. You folks in West Virginia, give a call to the West Virginia AD. Thank him for making a stand. That's important. He's fighting for our liberty. He's defending the Constitution. Make a phone call to the West Virginia Attorney General and thank him, okay? His name is, what is his name? His name is Patrick Morrissey. West Virginia Attorney General Patrick Morrissey. Thank you, Patrick, for doing your duty, for being a patriot, for fighting for the rights of all citizens. So before we take a short break here, I just want to kind of go to another story that's, just really interesting to me, okay? So this week I put out a story that said Democrats asked Biden to give up his authority to use the nuclear launch codes. I mean, if Joe Biden was all there, why would the Dems do this? It's amazing. A group of more than 30 House Democrats is asking President Biden to give up his sole control of U.S. nuclear weapons. In a letter by Representative Jimmy Panetta of California, the Democrats asked that their party leader alter the command and control structure surrounding America's nuclear arsenal so that no single person can launch the weapons. They know Joe Biden's not all there. They're afraid of his dementia. That's what's so unbelievable. And they keep pretending, no, the king has no clothes, right? What a beautiful suit you have on. It's unbelievable. And so that story was interesting because then it led to this next story, and it's, where is Joe Biden's State of the Union address, folks? What's going on here? The State of the Union usually happens in February. February's gone. Joe Biden hasn't even had a press conference by himself. 36 days he's been in office. He has not once come into the press room and answered questions from the media. And even the libertard propagandist leftist commie media is saying, hey, what's going on here? The answer is that Joe Biden's a fraud. Joe Biden's a TV show being produced behind the scenes. You're seeing all these things. His wife, Jill Biden, is literally having to carry his water whenever he's out speaking. When he's in Texas the other day, he couldn't remember what he was doing. She had to speak up and talk about their policies. His wife is having to talk about this. It's embarrassing. Where's Joe Biden? When are you going to do the State of the Union, Joe? Maybe you don't want anybody to know what you're doing. Maybe you don't want those people who supposedly voted for you. You don't want them to know what's going on, right? Because I got news for you. These supposed, blacks, African Americans who voted for Joe Biden, you think they want 10 million new illegal immigrants into our country to fight for their jobs? You think the Hispanics at the border who voted for Trump like what Joe Biden's doing? You think the union people appreciate the canceling of the pipeline, which costs union jobs, good paying union jobs? You think any American is happy with the increase in gasoline since he took over? Our gasoline is up 25%. We're going to be paying $4 a gallon by the end of the year, folks. Who likes that? Joe Biden's hiding. China Joe, Beijing Joe, right? Beijing Biden. He's hiding. He's a joke. This is a coup. This is a communist takeover of our government. And all of those, the Republicans and the Democrats, all participated. And they did so at the behest of big business, of global oligarchs, of Facebook and Twitter and Amazon and Google and Goldman Sachs and Wall Street. Joe Biden's he's a puppet. He's an empty shell. And that's what we said he would be. And so that's where we're at right now. So we're going to take a little bit of a break here, and I'm going to come back and we'll do the second half of the show. You're listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion podcast, and my name is Tom Zawistowski, and we're sure glad that you've joined us. The We the People Convention News and Opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio 44312. All right, and we thank everyone who does donate to support the We the People Convention. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for your support, and thank you for everyone who watched this podcast for your consideration. Okay? All right, so now we're going to move to some important stuff that's going on that you need to understand, okay? So we talked about, these lawsuits. We talked about what Georgia's doing and New Hampshire's doing and other states are doing to try to rein in the election fraud. But the threat to all of us is this House Resolution 1, which threatens our democracy. And this is the bill. It's called number 1, H.R. 1 and Senate Bill 1. It's called number 1 because this is their number 1 priority, folks. And this thing, I just can't believe it's legal, all right? But I want you to know what's in it, and then we'll talk about what I think is going to happen with it, okay? So this thing allows for same-day voter registration, allowing people to register to vote on Election Day. In practice, this would mean that there would be no such thing as voter registration. Anybody can just show up and register. Anyone who shows up at the polls, registers, and asks for a ballot can vote. Coupled with a ban on photo ID, it opens the door wide open to truly massive voter fraud. It automatically registers voters when you do any business with the state. So whether you want to register or not, you will automatically be registered. It will have online electronic voter registration so that people do not need to come into the election office in person to register, but can do so from home, eliminating any opportunity to verify identity or citizenship prior to registering the votes. Pre-registration of 16 and 17 years old, year-olds. They would pre-register them so that when they turned 18, they would already be registered. Make the Federal Elections Commission a partisan institution. Currently, the FEC has 6 members, and the statute requires that there be 3 from each party. This law, H.R. 1, would change it to 5 members with 2 from each party and 1 appointed, which means what? It'll be rigged, okay? Require that felons be permitted to vote, when in most states they're not. Eliminate partisan redistricting. It would require states to draw legislative districts through nonpartisan commissions appointed by the legislature and the governor, consisting of a certain number for each party and the balance from the general public. So they would not have, like right now in 2020, this is the reason that it was so important that the Republicans won so many of the state houses, is that every 10 years, these states are redistricted based on how many congressional people you have. Ohio, for instance, is going to lose one of our 16 congressional seats. And so they're going to have to redistrict the whole state. Well, right now, the Republicans are pretty much in control of that. This H.R. 1 would basically remove the control and basically not give you an incentive to win the House and the Senate because you wouldn't get any advantage from that. So we don't like the jerry-rigging of districts, okay? But this bill is also trying to get an advantage in the other direction. But listen to this. So they say you've got to do the districting fairly. And then the next thing says, preserve minority voting power in redistricting. Would ban reapportionment plans that dilute minority representation. So get what this says. The first thing I said to you, or the one before the last thing I said to you, said you have to just redistrict, fairly. Okay, you got to do it fairly. The same number of Republicans and Democrats, except if it's a minority district, you have to give them preference. That's racist. That's un-American. That's not fair. That's what the Democrats want to do in this bill. Restrict efforts to purge voter rolls of dead or move away voters. H.R. 1 would put needless obstacles in the way of efforts to purge the voting rolls of those who are ineligible, either because they have died or moved away. This is one of the biggest voter fraud things there is. There's people who've died who are still in the voter rolls, and then when they mail out ballots to that home, when no one asks for it, anybody who lives there can fill out the ballot. Okay? And they're basically making that the law. They're literally legalizing fraud. Require states to allow early voting for 15 days. This is an important campaign finance law change, and it's really not a bad idea. In Ohio, we're out to 30 days now. People can vote early. It's too far out, particularly when things change and you've already voted. Okay? So this H.R. 1 is the Democrats' dream of how we're going to permanently change the election laws so they can cheat anytime they want. Now, there's laws in the Constitution that I think can challenge this. The states have the right to decide how elections are run in their states. This is a grab by the federal government, right? That's not going to work. And the same thing is going on with this Equity Act, okay, which passed the House, okay? This Equity Act, which is just, again, they use a name that you think makes it sound so wonderful and so great and all this stuff, but it punishes faith-based organizations such as charities, adoption facilities, and schools who serve everyone in their communities simply because of their beliefs. It requires female segregated facilities like maternity homes and homeless shelters and the like to allow biological men to bathe and bunk with women. It risks mandatory funding, taxpayer funding of abortions. It forces people in everyday life, and especially healthcare workers, to support gender transition, which is anti-science, is insane, okay? Expands what the government considers a public place, forcing even some parish halls to host functions that conflict with Christian beliefs, okay? So they passed this Equity Act. What you don't know is that they passed the Inequity Act like 4 years in a row. They barely passed the House. H.R. 1 barely passes. When these things go to the Senate, they need 60 votes in the Senate to avoid filibuster. The Republicans can stop all of this. It isn't 50-50. You can filibuster if you want to stop it, and you need 60 votes to stop the filibuster. A lot of this stuff is going nowhere, including this racist COVID bill. Okay? So the $1.9 billion COVID bill did pass on Friday and is going to the Senate. And this thing it's only got, out of $1.9 billion, it only has like $619 million for so $1.9 trillion. It only has $619 billion for COVID. All the rest is giveaways to Democrats. They're stealing our money to bail out New York State and California. $258 million is going to them, not for COVID, just to bail out their pension funds that they overpromised. Okay? But it's racist for this reason. The poll shows that most Americans support the federal COVID relief bill because everybody wants their $1,400 check, right? So that question, polls show nothing about the bill because the people they're asking don't know anything in the bill. That's why you watch this podcast, right? To learn. But if they knew what was in it, they might feel differently. This bill is an affront to the American ideal of equal treatment under the law and a slap in the face for the people who want everyone helped fairly. Section 1005 of the bill offers socially disadvantaged farm owners total debt forgiveness is up to $100,000 of no strings dollars per farmer, but white men need not apply. The bill's definition of socially disadvantaged draws from elsewhere in federal laws, limits that say you have to be a racial group who has faced a historic discrimination to qualify for having hundreds of thousands of dollars of aid forgiven. New elected reps, the radical Warnock from Georgia, who proposed the measure, says it will make up for years of discrimination. Sorry, Senator, but this is discrimination. Discrimination likewise bars the bill as aid to restaurant. It grants restaurant owners up to $5 million per facility to offset losses caused by lockdowns. That's a lifeline for big restaurants barely hanging on. Here's the hitch. Only women, veterans, and owners of socially and economically disadvantaged concerns, again, defined racially elsewhere in federal law, may apply during the program's first 3 weeks. Most white males go to the back of the line even if their needs are more pressing. So the pandemic is hurting everyone, and they're putting in bills that are $1.9 trillion of our tax money, which isn't, they don't have the money. It's borrowed money, probably from China, and it's full of racism. So when they call you a racist, when they're saying you're a racist, Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, they're the racist. There's your proof. There it is, right there. There's your proof. The COVID bill. It's racist. It needs to be called such. It needs to be stopped by the Senate. This thing should not become law. And again, they're going to say, oh, the Republicans stopped you from getting your $1,400. No, they didn't. They were going to give you the $1,400 4 months ago, before the election. Nancy Pelosi wouldn't do it because it would help Donald Trump. So let me say that again. Nancy Pelosi wouldn't give needy Americans $1,400 to survive because they lost their job and their business so she could get political power. That's the definition of sickness. They're sick. They're sick people. So these bills don't remember what's going on. They'll say, oh, it passed in the House, and they'll show Nancy Pelosi waving her gavel and looking like how proud they are. That doesn't mean it's law. That doesn't mean the Republicans don't have any ability to stop it. Okay? And guys like Joe Manchin and stuff. Joe Manchin has come out, and another Democrat has come out and said, we will not vote to get rid of the filibuster. Folks, that's the biggest thing going. Because if they don't get rid of the filibuster, the Republicans stop whatever they want. And if they don't, they're liars as they tell you they can't. It's up to the Republicans to defend our nation and stop this insanity. And so part of stopping the insanity is really stopping the misinformation and propaganda. And I came across this story, and I thought this was pretty cool, pretty interesting. The co-founder of Wikipedia has decided that he is going to start a new free speech site competitor to Wikipedia because it's become so leftist. Co-founder of Wikipedia is launching a competing site as a free speech friendly alternative to what he views as an increasingly monolithic left-wing bias of his former organization. Last May, Wikipedia co-founder Larry Sanger wrote an op-ed on his personal website titled "Wikipedia is badly biased," claiming that Wikipedia's neutrality policy, known as NPOV or neutral point of view, is dead. Now, when school children visit the Wikipedia site to look up answers to questions about the meaning of socialism, they're going to find an explanation that completely ignores any conservative, libertarian, or critical treatment of the subject, Sanger told Just the News. And that's really problematic. That's not, what education is. That's propaganda. He's going to call his new site, well, let's see, I'm not sure if I remember what he's going to call the new site. It's not up yet. But he's basically, going to, launch a site that we conservatives will be able to use that will not be run by the left. That's a big step. Wikipedia, for the longest time, has been a propaganda tool. And we've got to stop that, and we've got to fight that. And I'm really glad to hear that the co-founder of Wikipedia is going to start something to change it. Okay? That's really cool. We talked last week about doing things locally and about, going after the unions, the school district unions in your school district, and about critical race theory and BLM and the 1619 Project and all of that. And I heard from many of you who were writing and calling your school district and asking them if they are teaching any of these things. And we're putting together a page on our website that says, end the anti-American propaganda in your schools, the 1619 Project, and critical race theory. I've asked Dr. Kelly Coles, who's a prominent educational advocate here in Ohio, to help me put together that page. It's coming together, and I'll let you know when it's available. But I had someone ask me, they said they called the school and they weren't getting any answers. And so I want to talk to you about a thing called a FOIA, a Freedom of Information Act document. All government agencies are required by law, when they get a Freedom of Information document requesting information, they're required to answer you. So if you look up FOIA documents on your favorite search engine, hopefully DuckDuckGo, you'll find a bunch of templates for that. We're going to put one together that's going to be on the webpage that you can literally copy, paste in an email, change the superintendent and the school district's name, change your name, and send it off. They are required to answer this. So you can ask for every email that has happened in the school district talking about critical race theory. You can ask for what books do they have about critical race theory or 1619 Project. You can ask all kinds of things. So we're putting this page together for you. And then we're going to have ways to teach you how you can then, if they don't take these things out of the school, in other words, first you'll find out, do they have it or not? Then you'll write to them and say, I demand that you remove these documents. They are not part of our school curriculum. We don't want it in our community. They're anti-American. They're racist. They're Marxist. They're hate-filled. We want you to remove them. Then if they say we're not going to do that, then we're going to give you the tools to organize and basically start to defund them by defeating school levies. And we're going to talk about that, okay? So we're going to provide you with those resources. Just keep looking for this on our WeThePeopleConvention.org page, and we're going to put this all under that, that graphic. So, those of you don't have to wait. You can do this on your own. You can contact your schools and find out if this cancer is within your school district and start to root it out, okay? Because we've got to. We have no choice. All right, so I've got a kind of a more in-depth thing I want to talk to you about, this, before we wrap up the show. I talked to you about the fact that it's on WeThePeopleConvention.org that a poll came out and said 62% of all American adults want another party. They don't want the Democratic and Republican parties. And then this week, another thing came out. Let's see if I can find that graphic here for you. Okay, and it said that half of Republicans would drop the GOP if Trump created a new party. But in that same article, there were stories that said that there was another poll released by Harris Hill, and that reported 64% of Republicans said they would either join or might join a MAGA party or a Patriot Party led by Trump. 36% of respondents said it would be more likely for them to stay with the Republican Party. And so there's clearly a need for something other, something other than the parties we've got. the point I want to make to you is that when people answer these polls, they aren't saying that they want another party. They're saying that they actually want a political party. The fact is, everyone, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat or Libertarian or Green Party or whatever, Constitution Party, the fact is no one is representing us. No one is representing us. And that's what's got to change. So I wrote a letter to President Trump this week, okay, to try to urge him to consider some different options. Now, I sent this letter hoping to stop him because he's going to speak at CPAC on Sunday. And what I'm afraid he's going to do is he's going to commit to support the Republican Party. And I believe that's a mistake. And I explained to the president in this letter why I think it's a mistake and what he should do differently, okay? And so what I want to explain to you is really a concept of creative destruction, okay? Creative destruction is what Uber did to the taxi business. The taxi business was a government-controlled, corrupt monopoly. In New York City, people would spend $1 million to get a taxi medallion so they could be a taxi driver. And there's all kinds of kickbacks and stuff like that. What did Uber do? Uber came up with a phone app that allowed individuals to give rides to people and get rid of the whole problem with the taxis. Now, the government fought back and they're trying to outlaw Uber and all that stuff. But that's a creative destruction. That's what is going on in a lot of the technology areas, okay? So like remote medicine is another example. During COVID, instead of going to the doctor's office, you're not doing a call, a Zoom call or an online conference, and they're talking about your health without you even going in. That's a destructive technology. That's a creative destruction. And you're going to see more of that. That ain't going away. Okay. The point you need to take with you is there are no political parties in the United States. There are none. Both the Democrat and Republican Party exist for one reason: to sell our vote to the highest bidder. There's no representation for us. The Republicans literally are owned by the big businessmen and big money, and so are the Democrats. So who's representing us? The answer is no one. Well, why aren't they representing us? Because they answer to the people who elected them. They don't think we elect them with our votes, because when they spend $100 million in one state in a Senate race, their money is electing them by convincing us with stupid TV commercials and eliminating our choice. Okay, you can vote for anyone you want as long as it's one of the two people I pick, right? Who you don't want either one, right? They're buying the election. We're not being convinced. We're being cheated. So what I'm trying to get the president to do is to reinvent the political party. And the way to do that is from the bottom up. You need to flip it upside down. Right now, the political parties are a pyramid, okay? Except all the money is at the top. All the money's up here, and the people are at the bottom. We need to now flip it. And the way that we can control the people we elect, and remember this, write this down. I may have said it before, but it's the most important thing you got to know about politics. Power is not being able to elect someone. It's the ability to unelect them. That's our problem. When they have the money, we can't unelect them. So we have to take that away. So what I'm proposing to President Trump is that he not start a political party, but that instead he starts the unparty. We're the unpolitical party. We're not what you hate. And you trash the Democrats and Republicans for being as corrupt as they are. And instead of starting a political party, which again is playing by their rules, look in your state how hard it is to create a political party. In Ohio, the governor Kasich was so threatened by the libertarians being on the ballot who could only win 1 or 2%, that they had the legislature change the laws to make it almost impossible for a party to form in Ohio and get on the ballot. So you don't want to go there. My point to President Trump is you can't win a rigged game. President Trump proved the game's rigged, right? Couldn't prove it anymore. The last election couldn't be more rigged. The only way to win a rigged game is to not play and make them play your game. So what I want the president to do is I want him to start a super PAC. Call it whatever you want, right? Call it the Patriot Party PAC, call it the MAGA Party PAC, but call it a PAC. One of the interesting things that we learned in the Tea Party movement is that when we first started, we were called the Tea Party. Lots of people thought we were a political party, and we weren't. It's the Boston Tea Party, right? We weren't a political party. I literally had to go to the Portage County Fair and prove to them that we weren't a political party because they didn't want to give us a booth at the fair 10 years ago. So by starting a PAC that's called the Patriot Party PAC or the MAGA Party PAC, people will just think you're a political party. But with a super PAC, you can back any candidate you want at any level, local, state, or federal. And what you can do is this PAC would say, we are only going to back independents. You must run as an independent. You must not be part of the corrupt Republican or Democratic Party to run and get supported by the MAGA Party PAC. Now, what does that mean? That means that the 74 million people who voted for Trump, if they want to be part of a real political party that represents, and parties in quotes, okay, because it's really a PAC, if they want to get represented, if they want to elect people who are going to vote for them and take their phone calls instead of the rich guy's phone call, they're going to join this PAC by giving $10, maybe $20, whatever you can give. That the Trump voters alone would fund that with $1 billion. $1 billion. And people say, oh, come on. Well, think about it. Just after the election and going up to January 6th, the Tea Party and the Trump people gave Trump, donated like $240 million for his defense. Okay? What, you think giving $10 or $20 a year is going to break you? You wouldn't give $10 or $20 to have real representation, to restore the Constitution? Okay? So now you got $1 billion and the grassroots effort. That can beat anybody. As soon as you do this, now you have a three-party system. Because they'll say, oh, independents never win. They never win because they never have any money and they have no support. So now here's where the fun comes in. It's time for President Trump to expose the traitors, to expose the people who play him and use us and are just garbage, like Mitt Romney, like Burr from North Carolina, like Lindsey Graham. So once you start the PAC and everyone starts to join, you say, we're only going to support people who run as independents. You, the people who join the PAC in your local area, will tell the Trump people who we want to be our person. We'll pick who we want to run for Congress. Then President Trump will say, here's the deal. The Republican Party is corrupt. I will not be part of it anymore. I'm going to run as an independent. And any Republican who wants my endorsement must leave the Republican Party and declare that they are now an independent and that they will run for re-election as an independent. And if you don't, we're going to arrange someone to primary you in your Republican or Democratic election, and then we're going to run an independent against you in the general. Now, guess what happens? When there's three people running and they all have significant support, you got a better chance of winning. And you don't have to win 51%. Because if you win 30% of the Congress seats, and it's all you have to do is prevent any one group from winning 51%, guess who controls the agenda? The people that own the 30%. Because neither of the other parties can pass anything without your help. And so this is how you flip it. And if anybody's going to get 51%, you know what it's going to be? It's going to be the MAGA party PAC. That's who's going to get 51%. Because you're going to get some of the Bernie people. You're going to get people who haven't even voted. You're going to get people who lost faith in our system years ago to understand, you know what, this makes sense. Because if you're running as an independent and you're a former Republican and the Patriot Party PAC is supporting you, and then the Koch brothers come along and say, well, we like this guy. We're going to donate $1 million to his campaign, or we're going to have a super PAC that's going to help him get elected. We're going to stop supporting that candidate. Any big donors who want to give to one of the candidates supported by the PAC have to donate to our PAC, because we won't let you be bought. But most important, remember what I said at the beginning. The key is to be able to unelect them. So when you run on the MAGA party, the Make America Great Party agenda, and you get elected and we elect you to city council or county commissioner or auditor or state house or whatever, if you don't follow up, if you do not vote that way, the key is to have the power to unelect you. Now, I just mentioned all those other races, and this is a key component. Many of you are old enough who are watching this will remember Ross Perot, okay? And Ross Perot ran and got 19% of the vote. But it was a single candidate campaign. You can't fix our country by electing one person, even if it's Donald Trump. We just found that out. So the key to all of this is that we have a full slate of people to run. But here's what's so important to all of us and all of you watching this podcast. For the first time in your life, people who aren't rich and who aren't owned by the rich, who are just the best people in your community, who are real patriots, who are honest, who would rather lose their job than lie, we can elect them. Citizen representatives. That's what we're missing. That's what this is about. That's what I'm asking President Trump to lead. I don't know if he'll do it. The people around him are selling him this garbage about the two-party system. The two-party system's a fraud. There's no other democracy in the world that only has two parties. You need to have three, because then you got to cooperate. You can't dictate. You can't fix it. You can't rig it. Don't play a rigged game. Run as independents and get the backing of the people. That's our best path. Not another party, just representation. Okay? So I'll be very interested in your comments about that. I know that's a pretty different take on things. I've thought about it a long time. I think I've got my T's crossed, my I's dotted. But if you have comments, write to me at info@wethepeopleconvention.org and let me know what you think. Tell other people about this podcast. Share it. Let's create some conversation, and I'll talk about the things you say and write to me next week when the next podcast takes place. Okay? But it's ideas like this that are going to help us restore the intent of our Constitution, because that's what's being destroyed. Okay? There is nobody in our government that is following the Constitution. So we need to find a way to force it upon them. Now, again, if we don't stop this HB1 thing, if we don't stop this Equity Act, if we don't stop some of these other things, folks, we're going to have to go to a different place, right? We're going to have to defend our freedom in a more literal way. But we still have ways to fight back. I want you thinking about that. I had some good input from people talking to me about my ideas of changing the cable TV charters in our communities this week. And we're getting closer to finding out how to do that. Keep thinking about, moving your money out of big banks, like the Gab CEO told us last week, and putting it in community banks. Defund Wall Street. Move your money out of the stock market, because I think it's going to go down anyway because of the Biden economy. Okay? They were already talking about inflation. The market was down like 600 points the other day. I don't know how the market's where it's at. Unemployment's going up. We've got all these people who are still unemployed from COVID, and you're going to bring in 10 million more people? Where are the jobs coming, Joe? Okay? Defund our enemies. Don't shop at Amazon. Don't go to the big box stores. Don't go to the chain restaurants. Go to the local restaurants. Use your head. Use your economic power. Keep fighting. Every little battle is important. Okay? For those people who tell me about how they didn't wear their mask to the grocery store and the manager came and they all got upset and you still didn't wear your mask, good for you. Good for you. Fight the fight in every way you can. That's how you win. And you don't cower and you don't apologize. And you tell the truth. Men are men, women are women, and you can't change that. Say it loud, say it proud. Don't ever give in. Don't ever just say what they want you to say. Speak the truth at all times, because that's what is required for freedom and liberty. Okay? That's what's required. Talk to your church about getting involved with the school districts and taking them over and stopping the homosexual agenda, the transgender agenda, the Muslim agenda, the critical race theory agenda. The churches need to stand up. You need to help them stand up by showing your support, by making sure the pastor isn't afraid that people are going to leave if they speak out politically. Let those people leave. Up your support so they know they're safe. Defend your church, defend your school, defend your community, and go on the offense against the left. Drive them out. Don't let them drive you out. Speak up for anyone in your community that they're bullying. Say it publicly. When someone's gone online and they're attacking them, speak up for them. Okay? Call in the local radio station. Write a letter to the editor. Speak the truth. Be relentless. Be relentless. Okay? All right. Sure appreciate you tuning in this week. I hope you enjoyed the show. I certainly gave you some things to think about. And so I appreciate all that you do. I appreciate you sharing it. We'll be back again next week, if not sooner. You're listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast, and my name's Tom Zawistowski.